Let us now discuss wide receivers. Antonio Brown is the most obvious number one choice possible. Fantastic week last week. And that was with him dropping a flea flicker that would have been a 60-yard touchdown.
73-yard.
73-yard.
Bomb, and it was placed
right in his hands.
Perfectly.
And
Stevie Johnson tweeted at God he was so upset about that one.
And if it was anybody but Antonio Brown, we would hate him for that.
Right.
But because he's so amazing and he already scored 2 touchdowns that day, hard to be upset about it.
100%. This was last year. He cost Pittsburgh a game because on a monster day he stepped out of bounds in the snow. Yep. This is his 2014 stepping out of bounds in the snow. Huge day, cost them a game, but we still love him because, man, is he good at catching the ball, running with it, and karate kicking punters.
And going up against the Jaguars. Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Next up, Jordy Nelson versus Minnesota. An easy start. Leads the NFL in receiving yards, leads the NFL in targets, leads the NFL in red zone targets. Yeah, I wish I had him on any of my teams. I do not.
Neither do I, which bums me out. I should have been a bigger believer. I've always been a fan of his game. Right now, he's actually on track. He and Antonio Brown and Jordy Nelson are on track to compete for number one overall fantasy receiver in 2014, which if I told you that 6 weeks ago, you would have told me to please not drink as much before I come over to your house for a live draft.
I would have believed you about Antonio Brown. Absolutely.
Maybe top 5, but not number 1.
I believe it. I think that's totally understandable. Antonio Brown is a complete package. But, Jordy Nelson definitely a surprise. I mean, top 5, sure, but going down the list, Dez Bryant, Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson, questionable with that ankle injury, but still Calvin Johnson. A.J. Green has coming off a bye week to rest his injured foot a little bit. A great play at New England.
Especially if, I would mention this before the show, but the Patriots have done something inconceivably brilliant, which is you pay $12 million a year for Darrelle Revis to come in and shore up your secondary. And what they're doing is that for every $1 million that they've paid him, they're having him play that many yards off the number one receiver of the team. So you can
zone. That's
mind-boggling.
That's it's almost like Greg Schiano is inhabiting, is inside Bill Belichick's brain, operating him. No, zone's the way to go with him.
Yeah, don't those movies usually involve like Judge Reinhold or Kirk Cameron? Like these body swap movies. It's mind-blowing. But yeah, I'd put A.J. Green higher if he hadn't recently been injured, or if we had seen a number one receiver go over 100 plus 2 touchdowns against the Patriots.
Yeah.
So I can see him having a solid, dependable top 10 night.
All these receivers that we're talking about right now are starts this week. And so I would rather blow through this list and then talk about guys that are maybe a little bit outside the top 20.
But I would like to ask you about one top 10 receiver. I think Randall Cobb will do his job. Didn't mean to rhyme, but we're moving on for time. Demaryius Thomas. I have him at 7. Now here's a guy.
Very disappointing start so far.
That's the thing. Where's he been?
He's been getting the targets. He's also had a game against the Seahawks in which Julius Thomas was the one to benefit with the touchdown there. He's been getting looks, but it just hasn't happened for him. He's getting the targets. It's still there. But Emmanuel Sanders, obviously roaming free and in easier coverage because of him, and Peyton Manning's going with the open man.
Right.
So,
and this week he draws Patrick Peterson, who promised after he got his big old contract that he was going to be as tough a cover cornerback in the NFL as there is. He's done a good job so far.
Yep. So I think that 7 is the right spot for Demaryius Thomas. Keep having faith in him. He's going to have. He's got some tough matchups.
A lot of guys spent some real. They thought about Jimmy Graham and they grabbed Demaryius at 9 or 10 in the first round probably. That's how it went off, and he's not played anywhere
near
that.
I think I was one of the people saying like, Demaryius Thomas worth a spot, worth a grab at 10 because he's gonna be the number 1 wide receiver this year. He'll supplant Calvin Johnson. I have not been proven right about that. Randall Cobb at 9, Brandon Marshall at 10, gimpy ankle, but still getting it done. Didn't get as many targets last week, but still found the end zone. Number 11, someone we talked about last week, Keenan Allen, back with a vengeance in week 4, 10 catches on 11 or 12 targets for 135 yards. Keenan Allen's just fine. We don't need
woke up in the second half. It's almost like Keenan Allen heard he put on like that special Cerebro, the helmet that.
He's actually a big fan of the show.
Charles, is he really?
Yeah.
Keenan Allen's a huge fan of the show. I was gonna go way further into the nerdverse. I was gonna say he put on Cerebro, which is that helmet that Professor X-Wares in the X-Men,
Okay.
and he heard all the voices of fantasy owners everywhere around the world just saying, "Come on, Keenan, you can do it. I need you, Keenan." It was all in the second, and what it was right after Eddie Royal got those 2 touchdowns, it was just like, that's enough. No, I'm the number 1 wide receiver on this team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, against the Jets, perfect week for him to just keep on rolling.
Yeah,
he can go all the way down the field, then Eddie Royal can get the touchdowns, and then I'll burn my apartment down.
Eddie Royal. I hate him so much.
He's done it. Last week I said people were going to race to the waivers and grab him. And some people did, and unfortunately,
I had to start him because of bye weeks.
You did.
I actually advised fantasy owners to not start Eddie Royal, and then I had to because I had too many guys on bye, and it worked out because he had 100 yards plus 2 touchdowns, and I hated him for it. I hated him for helping me.
You hated yourself for it. Too.
Yeah, exactly.
Until you won, and then you were like, "Hey, nice job, me."
Yeah.
You went against your own word, but so what? That's, rarely does that work in fantasy, but you desperate times call for desperate or ridiculous measures.
Yeah.
Eddie Royal now has done the 2-touchdown Eddie Royal job 2 weeks in a row. He does not, no way in the world should you start. This is not going to happen 3 weeks in a row.
Do you know what Eddie Royal's career high in receiving yardage for a year is?
Cannot be over 600 yards.
As a rookie, he had 900 plus yards for the Broncos. In 2008, he has cracked 600 yards 2 more times.
That's it.
Throughout his career, has never once sniffed like more than 700 yards since his rookie season.
During his breakout year that he had in 2008, and then in 2009, falls completely off the charts.
Yeah. He did score 8 touchdowns last year. He didn't have a ton of yardage, but he did score 8 touchdowns.
Like 500 yards and 8 touchdowns. And when you're but only like 40 catches too. So when you're in a half-point PPR league and you want those yards and catches as much as you want the touchdowns,
his value is tied completely to whether he gets in the end zone. He's useless if he doesn't, and therefore, like, for God's sake, just get rid of him now. Like you don't want to deal with that.
No.
If you can like sucker someone into like trading like for
Right.
him, if you have him and you're like, I don't want this dangerous volatile thing. I don't want the heartbreak of uneven play week to week. Just get rid of him. Get rid of him.
That's like having fireworks around.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like
Like you don't store your fireworks in your toddler's room, you know?
You don't?
No.
You should. Amazing things can happen. By the way, take nothing I've said so far. Not that you do, listeners/viewers, but yeah, I mean, if you don't want them, just at that point, you purposely pick up guys like him so that you can package them and trade them when you're looking for high upside guys.
All right, let's cruise through the rest of the top 20 here. You've got Vincent Jackson at 16 at New Orleans. He has been able to find the end zone, but has otherwise looked kind of this year. Manny Sanders versus Arizona. He's been great. He's a great mid-round pickup if you got him. Terrence Williams with a breakout game against New Orleans.
2 touchdowns.
I believe I pointed out that the Saints were giving up 10.2 fantasy points per game to wide receiver 2s last week. So,
and wait a second. The Matt Ufford, president of the Matt Ufford Back Padding Society, is about to just get a whole lot back pattier, everybody.
Yes.
Because who do I have at number 19 but someone that you predicted last week would be a top 5 wide receiver?
And I was wrong. He was actually a top 2 wide receiver last week. Steve Smith Sr.
You're going to get tennis elbow for patting yourself in the back so much.
Rounding out the top 20, you've got Percy Harvin at Washington. I think that's a right place for him. Again, with Harvin, he only had 43 yards or so in week 3. That was to be predicted. The Broncos were going to set out to stop him. He's used as a decoy in the Seahawks offense a lot. I think that against a team like the Redskins, it's only going to take like 2 jet sweeps or one bubble screen for him to find the end zone.
The closest thing that they had to a human being that could cover wide receivers went out week 2 with a torn Achilles for the season. And D'Angelo Hall was hardly exactly who I would consider a top-flight cornerback. So look what the Giants did. The Giants came in with their pop gun offense, or at least that's what we expected it to be heading into that game, and went off for 45 points and could have pushed it to 52 if they tried really hard.
Yeah.
What do you think Seattle? I mean, Marshawn, huge night. Russell, again, good night. I could see Percy Harvin with a rushing touchdown, a return touchdown, 6 catches, 80 yards. Never know.
I'd be okay with that.
Sure.
one last quick note. I think Brian Quick, if you've got a PPR league, is a nice matchup against Philly this week.
Thought about that.
I'd give him a look this week if you need that PPR play. If one of your Dolphins or Raiders wide receivers is on bye.
We're going to Andre Holmes, Brian Hotline. Do you know last week when I was talking about fantasy dumpster diving, and that last week was a great week because 6 teams were on bye and a lot of people were really in a hole when it came to finding a flex or something like that. Some people had to make some really tough choices and cut players they hope would make their waivers so they could put them back on the practice squad, aka their fantasy team's bench.
Yeah.
And guys like Ben Tate ended up getting cut because
there's some
Brian Quick got cut off a lot. It was available in a lot of Yahoo leagues. I went in and scooped him up all around the board now, and now that gives you great wide receiver and running back depth.
Yeah, I could not agree more. All right, that's our wide receiver talk for Week 5.
Top shelf wide receiver talk at that.
Thank you.